All right, well, welcome to another undergraduate research workshop. Again, my name is Gareth Jones. I'm the Assistant Director in the Office of Service Learning and Undergraduate Research. And I'm very excited to present today. This is one of my favorite things to talk about is how to go on from presenting at an expo to a national or an international conference, because that's really, that part should be part of your plan as you are going along your research career, is not to just present at a symposium at a summer research program or even at your home institution, which you should still do, but then how to then take that knowledge and that experience to a national conference or an international conference, because those things really look fantastic on your CV. They look great, things you can talk about. And I've referenced them before, but again, our keynote speakers are a great example of this, of how they presented at Expo first, and they went to national conferences, and they went to international conferences. And now those were all things that really helped them develop as researchers and help them get into medical school. So you should have the same thing as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. All right, so you should all see the national, international conferences there. Let me just make sure it is in the duplicate mode. There we go. All right, and I'm going to give you some very specific ones. So feel free to jot these down, but I'll also forward this to all the summer programmers so that you get a copy of this, so that you can look into these even into more detail later on, or you can, shoot me an email, or if you don't get it for some reason, I'm happy to share these slides with you for any of our presentations. So feel free to do that. All right, but let's talk about what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about national conferences. We're going to then transition into international conferences. I'm going to talk about how to specifically kind of use your expo experience to prepare for these conferences. And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks to submitting to these conferences. And then we're going to have a little Q&A session. So that's kind of the order of business for today, talking about conferences. So first, we're going to start with the biggest, the NCUR. I'm just curious, has anyone actually presented at NCUR that's in this workshop? Feel free to drop it into the chat if you have. And again, those of you who are just joining us, please also make sure to drop your name, your email, and your program into the chat. Also, you can just speak out if you've presented at NCUR, if you have an experience that you had, even if it was online. It has been online the past 2 years, but it is the biggest one in the whole world for undergraduates. It is gigantic. They have over 4,000 undergraduates attend and present at the NCUR. And the NCUR is part of an organization called CUR, which just stands for the Council of Undergraduate Research. And the Council of Undergraduate Research is there for many reasons: to support and promote undergraduate research. They help faculty develop opportunities. So they're kind of like my office, but on a much bigger scale. And then it includes all of these people in my types of positions that help put on these events, and get together and share best practices, and then put on opportunities for students to present their work. And it rotates around the country. So next year it is going to be at the University of West Florida, as you see in that picture there. So if you want a trip to West Florida, they're planning for in-person right now. It'll be next spring, as I said, usually in late March, early April. Abstracts are usually they'll do in early November, or they open it up and then it ends in December. They haven't posted any of this stuff yet. I think they're really evaluating what it's going to look like. I think we all are right now. We're looking at statistics and CDC and all these things and recommendations, but for now they are still advertising that's going to be in person next spring. So you should definitely mark your calendar, and I'll talk about that a lot more in tips and tricks here. But this is the biggest one, and so a couple things about this. And UAB, we send anywhere from 50 to 70 students every year to this event, and it's a great experience to network. Now there aren't competitions. You don't get a prize or a place when you present there, but you get the opportunity to present to a national audience, right? And you get to meet students from all over the country. You get to attend panels. You get to talk to and network with people from all across the country. So those are some of the big benefits of it, as well as you've presented at the biggest undergraduate research conference in the world, right? So those are all good things, good experience to have. And again, it's a building block. So if you take Expo and you get NCUR, then you can build on some of these other opportunities and look at some of these other cool conferences. So the next cool conference I want to talk about is one that we discovered here at UAB a few years ago. Maybe some of you have heard of a place called Harvard. But this is a student-run undergraduate research conference. So the students are your peers. They are the ones evaluating it. Now they do reach out to obviously a lot of faculty and mentors there at Harvard. And in fact, that's one of the biggest benefits of it, obviously, is if you get into it, you get to interact with these people. You get to go to great keynote speeches. They have incredible speakers from all across the country, not just Harvard, but from all over the place. It's usually in January. Again, they haven't posted yet the dates on this, but again, it's Harvard. It's prestigious from that perspective. I've talked to our students who have gone to it and attended, and for them, they said the networking was the biggest benefit from it. They really connected to a lot of people and asked about other programs that are around the country that they were interested in. So we had about 4 students that went there before COVID, and they had a great time. But it is a student-run conference, so you have to know that going in, right? So it's still very professional. I'm not saying it's professional, but it's at that level. But it is at Harvard, so you can weigh all those different things and see what you think is the best for you. But it's a good one to look at. Posters on the Hill. This is one of my favorites because, as you can see there, you get to present to Congress people, to senators, to Congress people, people who are making big decisions about budgets and how things are funded. This is Kendall Curtis, a student of ours who went 3 years ago, meeting with Representative Terry Sewell, who is the representative for Birmingham. And she had an incredible meeting. She also met with a few other representatives and had a wonderful conversation about some cancer research. And it really personalizes research for these politicians, right? And however you align yourself, they're universal research applications, right? I mean, we all want to cure cancer. We all want certain things that happen. And this is just an incredible opportunity to present in that way. And it's extremely prestigious. So because they only allow a few people per state. And sometimes this even rotates. UAB, we've had 3 years in a row that we've gotten people in, but before that we went like 5 or 7 years without anyone. In order to do this one, you really, really need to work closely with your mentor. Your mentor is a big part of this process when you're applying for this one. Again, this is any kind of research, okay? Some of these I'm going to talk about are purely STEM-based, but again, this is for any kind of research. It could be psychology, it could be STEM-based, whatever it may be. But in all cases, you need to work very closely with your mentor. In fact, there's a mentor that I've worked with here on campus for many years, and she one year had a runner-up. So then she reached out to the committee and said, hey, what can I do to make sure I don't have a runner-up, that I have someone who's selected? She got some really great advice, and then the following year she got someone in. So It's just really good to communicate with your mentor, as it is with all of these, okay? Because you want them to be part of that process, right? They're going to give you lots of advice or mentoring you, right? So you want them to be part of the process. You don't want to submit something that might have their name on it, and suddenly they're like, oh, well, I got this email from this conference. Are you presenting there? You know, you need them to be part of the process. Sometimes they'll give you money. You know, that's one other benefit of talking to your mentor. But no matter what, you need to work with them. All right. So this next one, this is one that's extremely specific for REU's, research experiences for undergraduates, which you are all in right now. And some of yours are funded by the National Science Foundation, the NSF. So this one is specifically for those, all right? Just specifically for National Science Foundation funded programs. But what's great about it, although it'll be virtual this fall, but it gives you an opportunity to, again, work with your mentor where you apply. And it's in the fall. They're putting up updates right now, so keep an eye out for that. But it's an opportunity for you to take exactly what you worked on this summer and then present it again to a large national audience. Okay, and there are a lot of great benefits there for networking, for building bridges with schools and all those sorts of things. And it is prestigious to present at the National Science Foundation. So that's one where you're taking exactly what you're working on. If you're in an NSF program this summer, which again, we have several here on campus, and you're going to present at the fall symposium. So check that one out if you're one of those programs. And as I said, must work with your mentor. Okay. Abercams is sometimes what they call this in short, but the ABRCMS, the Annual Biomedical Research Conference for Minority Students. There's a lot of words there. This is one of our grad students who went. So this is not only an opportunity as an undergraduate, but it's also something you can do as a graduate. If you need, say you're a senior right now and you go to graduate school, this is one that you can look at. There are lots of good opportunities with this. It's open to community college students as well as university students. You just need to be a sophomore or above. Again, it's virtual this year. Deadline September 10th. It's going to happen in November. But this is, again, a really great program. Actually, I'm going to highlight in this poster, Dr. Gwendolyn King used to run SPIN. So if any of you here are with SPIN, Dr. King actually started that program here. And this is one of her mentees that went on to present at Abercams. So it's a really great, conference to present at. Fantastic support. They do have scholarships to travel when it goes back to travel, and all those things are to pay for the fees and all of that. But it's a really strong one to present at as well. Next one, SACS. Now, the previous one, you do have to be a representative of that minority population. But this one, even though it says it's the Society for Advancement of Chicanos, Hispanics, and Native Americans in Science, it actually is open to everyone. Okay, so this is for everyone, even though it says that, but you can still apply to get into this conference. It is STEM based, as we see here. It is open to everyone. It's in October. It is virtual this year. But again, I can't recommend enough, and I'll talk about this again in tips and tricks, but take advantage of these virtual opportunities still. They're still there. They're great opportunities for you to present your research, to talk about research, to be more articulate about your research. That's going to help you down the line in so many different ways. So even though, yes, going in person for some of these, it's a different experience and there are benefits there, but still take advantage of these that are virtual, and because they have great opportunities. So this one, the applications are in March and May. So you'll have to think about it for next year, for 2022. They have a lot of good funding to help you attend. And so I'm hopeful for next year, it's going to be in person of 2022, and that you'll get some funds. All right, next we have Sigma Chi Student Research Conference. So I talked about this earlier when we talked about how to find funding. So this is the Honor Society, Scientific Research Honor Society, and they have their own conference, right? And again, it's open to all disciplines. This is not just STEM. This is for all disciplines. You could apply for this one, August 1st is the deadline. You could wrap up your expo and then submit your abstract to the Sigma Chi, because it is a hybrid event. So they're going to have some in-person stuff, but a lot of it will be online, and it's in November. All right. So, and again, there's funding to attend these because again, they're trying to build support for students through this honor society. For some of them, though, you do have to join the society. So that obviously the turnaround for this year for some of you, if you're not already part of that society, it may be challenging to get into the apply for this year, but maybe for next year. Again, thinking that, okay, August is the deadline, November is when it happens. So it's a really strong one to attend. All right, another one to look at. This one's here in the South, the Gulf Coast Undergraduate Research Symposium. Applications open up in August. They are looking right now. It's at Rice University, which is in Texas. They're the host. Right now they have it as in person. Of course, that could change. As with all of these, if it's one that you're interested in, you need to make sure to bookmark it and keep checking back for when the submission dates are there, okay? Or whether it's virtual, whether they're going to be virtual or in person. These things are fluid right now, as we know. Things can change overnight, so you just want to keep track of that. This is open to everyone. Again, it's not just STEM based, but this is a good regional one that you could apply to. All right, so now we're going to transition over to international conferences. So I gave you a lot of very specific, and by the way, I'll also link you to our website. Our website, we list those plus many more on our website of conferences that you can apply to as an undergraduate. So I do recommend looking that over. We have some very specific ones for neuroscience there, for other types of disciplines. And that's another thing I would say, is that whatever your discipline is, talk to your mentor. And there are absolutely so many discipline specific. There are chemistry conferences, there are biology conferences, there are psychology conferences. So you want to make sure that, you know, as you're talking to your mentors through these last few weeks, as you're getting your research done, if you want to present that research again, make sure that you can do that and make sure they're part of the conversation. Okay, some of them are very open to it. Some of them are going to say, no, that's our work, it stays here. But you need to have that conversation with them if you want to present it again. So you presented at Expo, you then went and presented at a national conference. What are you going to do next? You're going to conquer the world, right? and we have students who've done that. I mentioned our two keynotes. Again, they presented at Expo, they then presented at Acre, and then they presented at WorldCur. So this is one that happens every 3 years. It was in Germany in 2019, and it was an incredible experience for our UAB students to go over there to Germany, and they met students from all over the world, from all corners. It was amazing that you could be sitting down for a meal and you're talking to someone who's from Ghana, you're talking to someone who's from Nepal, you're talking to someone who's from Alaska, you know, all over the world, people, or British Columbia. I had a lovely conversation with a colleague from Vancouver, which I'm hoping may be one of the future sites of WorldCur after. They have announced that Warwick, the University of Warwick, will be the next host in England. So that's in 2022. So you should definitely mark your calendar if this is something that you're interested in. Again, it was a great opportunity to talk to people from all over the world and network. It was a great opportunity to present to an international audience. They have prizes. We had a student who got first place in her category. She got 500 euros. Nothing to ignore. That's not a small amount. But best of all, again, I can't emphasize enough, it was so amazing to see them interact, go to these workshops, go to panel discussions, and just work with students from all over the world and just meet people. And that then becomes your international connections. And these students who went with me absolutely explored those connections. And as I said earlier, you know, the two that went with me are a keynote. They use that as a springboard to apply for and win Fulbrights to Germany. And they directly reference this conference as one of the ways that improve their chances. So all that being said, this is a fantastic opportunity. Put it on your calendar. It's a great thing to do. Another one over in England, it was in Leeds this year, but Beaker. So all the people over in the UK, they came over and they saw what Acre was doing. They're like, okay, we need to do this in the UK. And so they created their own conference over there, and they opened it up to students from all over the world. We had a bunch of students who got into this one, but unfortunately, COVID came along and they had to adjust. And so they weren't able to travel over to England to present. But again, it's an opportunity to present to an international audience. It's in the spring. Again, it's open to all disciplines, doesn't have to be STEM based. And in fact, I would often say that interdisciplinary projects get highlighted quite a bit. So if there's a collaboration that you can do with, or if you're a dual major, find ways to combine those things, and maybe find a mentor who's working on a project that connects to it, or, there's so many opportunities, and that really highlights. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, we had a student who who did paintings of people that had autism. And bring in Brandon there, and we actually showed those at our own expo, and then that student took those on to a national conference and was able. But she was a neuroscience student, and she was able to talk about how the art represented both scientific and artistic elements. So that's an example of interdisciplinary. But this is again a great opportunity to go present to an international audience, and that's Beaker. Another Acre, so the Australasian Conference. And this is another one that you could, in theory, apply to now. It's virtual. It happens in September, July 19th. I know today is the 14th, so that's 5 days from now. But if you feel really strongly about your research, you could apply there. Again, it's open to all disciplines. This picture is an example. They also have, as I was talking about art there, this is an example of an art competition that the Australasian Conference had. They started it in the spring, and then if you just Google Acre, these are the things that come up. So if you have something, again, that crosses disciplines, it can get a lot of attention. They had a competition here for that. So I thought this was an interesting example, using fatty liver as a piece of art. So anyway, this was another one, and those same two keynote speakers, I'm sorry I keep using them as examples, but you know what, they went to WorldCur and then they immediately applied to Acre and they got in there. They traveled down to Australia to present, and they got first place down there, and they each got a prize. Again, they're globetrotters. Not everyone's globetrotter, but this is, they really took advantage of all of these opportunities, and you put them together. Again, these are stepping stones to those fellowships and funding opportunities that we talked about with Dr. Michelle Cook a few weeks ago. So I can't recommend enough finding and exploring opportunities. Now, a lot of these will have scholarships to help with travel. So you need to explore that as well, because it certainly is not cheap to get to these international locations. So make sure to explore those. Here at UAB, we were able to fund students to go over. We found the funding. It doesn't hurt to ask. You can talk to your mentor. If there's an Office of Undergraduate Research at your institution, you can talk to them. And so hopefully once all of this pandemic starts to hopefully wane, we're going to open the doors here again at UAB and take students internationally to present their research. So we're very excited about that. So hopefully that happens soon here. But again, not every institution has an Office of Undergraduate Research. So talk to your mentor, at your home institution. There are, as I said, scholarships. Acre has scholarships, Beaker has scholarships, WorldCur has scholarships, because again, they want people to not be limited by finances to attend. Okay, so you can apply for those if your school doesn't fund you. All right. So that's the last of the international conferences. So let's talk about some tips and tricks to getting into these wonderful opportunities. Okay, so when I work with students and we start talking about these, I say create a spreadsheet, whether you're using Excel or Google Slides, whatever you're going to use. Be organized. That will help you a lot because you don't want to miss a deadline. And sadly, sometimes I talk to students and they've missed a deadline because they didn't keep track of things. So create a nice spreadsheet of all the ones that you're interested in and put those deadlines on there. Okay, that's the first step. Then you really need to make sure to read the guidelines closely because you don't want to be eliminated for a simple thing. So some of them obviously are going to have limits, word limits or character limits on the abstract submissions. You want to make sure that you submit to the right category. There's so many little things, and some of them are very tricky. I mean, I'll be honest with you, you got to really read the small print on some of these to make sure that you're following the guidelines because you don't want to be eliminated for something silly like that, when you have great research to present. And they don't even read it because you didn't do something right. Obviously another big thing actually I didn't put on here, but I'm going to talk about right now because I thought about it. I mean, if you're doing international travel, you need to start early with your passport. Okay. You need to make sure that you're starting that process because that is complicated right now. All right. We all know what's going on right now, but that process is not going to get easier for a while. So if you're thinking about an international conference, you really need to start the ball rolling almost more than 6 months in advance. Okay, so if you're thinking about one of those for next year, you may want to start thinking about starting that process now. One of those guidelines is you want to make sure that you can present research that you've already presented somewhere else. So if you were presenting, as I said, something from the expo that you're presenting this summer, or something that you present at your own institution, you want to make sure they don't have a little stipulation there saying, oh, we will only take first time presented research. I'll give you an example. Acre, the Australasian conference, has that stipulation that it has to be brand new, first time presented. Okay, so make sure you're checking all of those things so that, again, you don't get eliminated for something like that. All right, and of course, talk to your mentor. Okay, you've heard that several times already. I'll keep saying it. Make sure you're working with your mentor. As I said, sadly, sometimes I'll get a mentor who will be just, hit out of the blue with an email saying, oh, your student has applied for this conference and your name is listed. And they'll reach out to me and say, hey, what's going on? And I'll say, oh, they didn't talk to you. They should have talked to you because that's a huge part of it. All right. And of course, they're going to give you lots of good advice to make sure you get into that. So make sure you're working with them. As I said at the start, a lot of these are still virtual, and that's okay. Still apply, still present. These are wonderful things to have on your CV. These are wonderful opportunities, again, to practice presenting, that you'll get better at it. The more you do it, the better you are at it. And again, these are all stepping stones to bigger opportunities, right? So still take advantage of those opportunities. And when you get there, take advantage of all of those panel discussions and lectures and networking opportunities. I've escorted enough students to know that sometimes people don't always take advantage of those, right? And you never know, that might be the one thing that you go to and you're like, oh my gosh, that was brilliant, and you ask a really good question, and suddenly you realize, oh, that person's at a school that I'm going to apply to, or this is a future colleague that I can reconnect with. So engage with all those opportunities. Take advantage of the free meals, okay? Both the ones that are going to go in your mouth, but the ones that go in your ears as well, right? Those free opportunities at conferences, sometimes those are some of the most beneficial parts of it. So engage with it, when they have those opportunities. And a lot of you are doing that this summer. I've got to really compliment you. I know some of you are required to be here and listen to me, but a lot of you are really also engaging in these and trying to get the most out of it, right? And that's really important. So the same thing when you go to a conference. Take advantage of those opportunities. Go to other lectures, go to other presentations. If you go to NCUR, after you've presented, go look at some other presentations. Same thing this summer. I'll even say that with Expo, right? you're going to have access to all these other presentations this summer. Go check some of them out if they're especially in the same discipline as you. Even if they aren't in the same program as you, you can still go check out some other cool research, ask a question or two, give a compliment. You never know. Could be someone down the line that you meet in the scientific world. And that's the other thing, you know, when you think about the world, you know, present internationally. The world is huge, but it's also relatively small. It's amazing how when you go to these conferences and you start interacting with people, you realize, oh, wow, they've worked on that, and they know that person, and I know that person, and suddenly you're making these connections. All right. And then practicing. Okay. As I said, I highlighted a few of our students that won awards at these conferences and really made a name for themselves there. And that was because they've practiced, that they've practiced and they've practiced. So they've presented at Expo multiple times. They've presented at national conferences. They've taken opportunities to present in classes. You know, there's all sorts of ways that you can practice presenting your research. You know, here at UAB or for the Expo, you have the option of doing a poster presentation. You have the option of doing an oral presentation. Practice in multiple formats, okay, so that you can be articulate about research in multiple ways. And that's another thing with these conferences is, again, it gives you that opportunity to present and talk, because when you're applying to medical school or a professional school or a job, the better you are at talking about your experiences, the more likely you are to get that position or that job. That's just the truth. People are very impressed when you can really make connections in that discussion. And so if you can talk about a life-changing experience in Germany, you know, and that's what my students were able to do when they got to those interviews and those personal statements that they created. So those are some of the basic tips and tricks that I have for getting into those conferences. So I wish you the best on that. So I'm going to go ahead and open the floor now for questions. Let me make sure there's nothing in the chat question wise, but feel free now to throw something in the chat, or if there's a slide that you wanted to see again, or again, I'm happy to answer any kind of Expo questions as well, since I'm the Expo person as well. So feel free to ask questions in the chat, or you can speak out loud. I'm happy to talk right to you as well. All right, Logan, how often do these conferences only allow first-time presented research? Okay, I'll be honest with you. I was surprised that Acre had that stipulation. It's not that common, especially the national conferences. And again, if they're specifically for undergraduates, you're less likely to have that because they understand, right? That you're usually working with a mentor. Sometimes you're working on your own stuff and you just don't have as much time, right, as a regular researcher. But the national conferences that are not just for undergraduates, say you go to a conference with your mentor, with your whole team, in that case, it's very often that it needs to be the first. Okay, here's an Expo question. Create a PowerPoint and submit it as a poster presentation. So the judges, if you sign up to say you're going to be doing a poster presentation, they're going to want to see a single slide, just like it would be a poster in person. All right. If you want to do a series of PowerPoints to present it, that could be an oral presentation that is pre-recorded, but it's still considered an oral presentation and it's a little bit longer. Does that make sense, Sage? Because that's a good question. Okay, good. So when you are submitting, you basically have four options, right? You can do a pre-recorded poster presentation, which is a single slide, and you narrate what's on the slide. Or you can do a pre-recorded and an in-person live poster presentation, again, where you put your poster up, you share it in Zoom, and then we have judges come into that breakout room and they ask you questions and you present on your research, okay? Or you can do an oral presentation pre-recorded, or you can do an oral presentation live, okay? And again, that is a series of slides, 10 to 12 minutes with a Q&A. If you do it live. If you do pre-recorded, the judges will leave questions for you in the Canvas shell. Good questions. Other questions about Expo or about conferences?
Oh, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Cam.
So when you're presenting at the expo, do they rank you or judge you based on the quality of your research or mostly your presentational skills when they're like first, second, third place?
That is a great question. So I would say it's a little bit of both, right? In that if you got to present it well, but you also have to have sound research. Okay. Now we have a works in progress section. So if you are working on something that you don't have all of your data, and you haven't got to full conclusions or anything like that, you can absolutely enter it into the works in progress so that they don't judge you for not having that, right? But yeah, it needs to be sound research that's well presented. That's what they're looking for. It could be decent research, but if it's not well presented, then they're going to ask questions, right? They're going to be like, well, how did you get to this if you did this? Or how did you get to this conclusion? Or what was your hypothesis? You don't have it here. That type of thing. So they definitely want you to present well. It needs to look good aesthetically. It needs to, and then when you walk through it, you need to have a story. You need to do a good presentation. And we do have some good videos on how to do that on our YouTube channel on both of those things. Now, again, working with your mentor and your team, that make sure that you cover all the things that you need to do and that it looks good. Really important. So did that answer your question, Keon?
Absolutely. Thank
Cool.
you.
Good question. All right. Any other questions about Expo or about presenting at national and international conferences? Again, if you joined a little bit late and you didn't put your name in the chat, go ahead and do that. Give people a moment if they're typing a question or if they're raising their hand. I know y'all are getting tired near the end, getting all your research ready, getting your abstract submitted. So I understand if you're not thinking of a question right now. All right. Well, if you come up with a question later, absolutely feel free to send me an email, whether it's about national or international conferences or about presenting at the expo. I'm happy to answer any of those. Feel free to ask them. But if not, we'll go ahead and I'll go and stop sharing there. And also, you're welcome to stay after if you want to ask a question to me in person. That's fine too. But otherwise, I know you got a lot of work to do this week, so I won't use any more of your time. I'll just bid you adieu and wish you the best. Thanks again.